The Great Spaghetti Disaster. Once upon a time in the quirky town of Wissington, there lived a well meaning but somewhat clumsy chef named Tim. Tim was known for his unusual but tasty dishes. One day, he decided to try a new recipe for spaghetti, something he had never cooked before. He had heard it was the best spaghetti ever, and he was determined to make it himself. Tim went to the local market to buy the ingredients. He was on mission, confidently picking out tomatoes, garlic, and a huge sack of spaghetti. However, Tim had never really paid attention to the quantities he needed. So, he bought enough tomatoes to fill a bathtub and garlic that could feed a whole vampire family. As he was leaving, he spotted a jar labeled Mystery Spices and decided to add a bit of adventure to his dish. Why not? He thought, tossing the jar into his basket. Little did he know, these spices were meant for a Halloween party and included ingredients like ghost pepper and dragon's breath. Back at his tiny kitchen, Tim started cooking. He poured the enormous sack of spaghetti into a pot that was far too small. The spaghetti began to overflow, and soon the kitchen floor looked like a scene from a pasta themed disaster movie. Tim tried to rescue the situation by adding the giant amount of tomatoes into a blender. The blender, however, was not equipped to handle such a huge load. Instead of blending, it created a tomato volcano that erupted all over Tim's apron, the ceiling, and even the cat who had been napping on the counter. Undeterred, Tim moved on the sauce. He tossed in garlic but forgot to peel it first. As he attempted to chop the unpeeled cloves, they flew around the kitchen like garlic shaped missiles. One clove landed in the fish tank, making the fish swim around in confusion. Tim then added the mystery spices into the sauce. Almost immediately, the kitchen filled with smoke and a smell that could only be described as explosive. The spices were so strong that the smoke alarm started beeping, and Tim's neighbor, Mrs. Potts, came over to see what was happening. When Mrs. Potts arrived, she found Tim frantically waving a towel to clear the smoke. Her eyes widened at the sight of the tomato splattered kitchen and the spaghetti climbing out of the pot. Trying to stay calm, she asked, Tim, what on earth are you cooking? Tim, with a sheepish grin, replied, Spaghetti, or at least I think it's supposed to be spaghetti. It might be more of a spaghetti catastrophe now. Mrs. Potts couldn't help but laugh. Let me help you. I've got a recipe for spaghetti that doesn't involve a disaster zone. Together, Tim and Mrs. Potts managed to salvage what was left of the sauce and spaghetti. They prepared a meal that, despite its rocky start, turned out delicious. The two of them sat down to eat, and Tim learned that sometimes even the best intentions can go hilariously wrong. As they enjoyed their meal, Mrs. Potts said, "Well, Tim, you have certainly made the best of a spaghetti disaster. Next time, let's just stick to the recipe." Tim chuckled and agreed. "Deal. And maybe I'll stick to recipes that don't include mystery spices or exploding blenders." From that day on, Tim's kitchen adventures became the talk of Washington. The townspeople would come by for a taste of his latest creations, always with a side of humor and a sprinkle of chaos. And so, Tim learned that cooking was not just about following a recipe, but about having fun and laughing through the mishaps. His story became a favorite among the locals, reminding everyone that even when things go hilariously wrong, there's always a way to turn it into a memorable experience. This funny story uses simple language and humorous situations to make learning English enjoyable. It provides opportunities for learners to pick up vocabulary related to cooking, everyday life, and common mishaps, all while engaging with a light-hearted narrative.